It was a regular afternoon in Calabar, Cross River State, Nigeria, when a well-known retired NNPC worker did something that would shock an entire community. He shot his daughter's boyfriend dead in broad daylight. But that was not the end of it. In what appeared like a desperate move to cover up the crime, he teamed up with the senior police officer, the Divisional Police Officer of the area, to bury the body in a cemetery before anyone could ask questions. They successfully did this without any obituary, no family consent, and no investigation. But as they say, the dead do not remain silent forever. What began as a simple disappearance would later transform into one of the most disturbing murder cases in Cross River State. It all began on the 10th of March 2015 when Mrs. Maria Ojugbo was still at work. It was a very important day for her because a new commissioner for agriculture had just assumed office and was making rounds across all departments. Since Mrs. Maria was the director of fisheries, she had to be present at work. While the commissioner's visit was ongoing, Maria received a phone call from her neighbor. The neighbor sounded worried. She said she had seen Douglas, who was Mrs. Maria's son, looking very disturbed at home. The neighbor said when she asked him what was wrong, Douglas told her that he was angry because he had sold his laptop to someone and that the person had refused to pay him his balance. Maria, knowing his son very well, asked the neighbor to help calm Douglas down. She pleaded with her to convince him not to go anywhere, but time passed and Maria continued with her official duties. Later that day, when she got home, Douglas was nowhere to be found. She asked the neighbor what happened, and the woman explained that she tried her best to stop Douglas from leaving the house, but he was very determined to do so. The neighbor also mentioned that she called him shortly after he walked out, but he didn't pick up his phone. Hearing this, Maria quickly brought out her phone and also tried to call her son, but there was no answer. They waited till evening, hoping that he would eventually return home, but this turned out to not be the case. Douglas never returned home that night. The next morning, she tried Douglas's phone once again, but this time around, it had been switched off. Now, Maria and her husband began to worry. They didn't know where to begin searching for Douglas. No one had seen him, and his phone was dead. While she was at work, the same neighbor called her again, telling her to rush home immediately, together with her husband. When Maria asked what was going on, the neighbor told her that she had received information that a young man was murdered near the Cross River Basin Authority. The neighbor asked them to go and find out who the slain young man was. She also informed them that witnesses around the area said the corpse of the victim had been taken to the Federal Housing Police Station. Maria quickly reached out to her husband, and together they made their way to the police station. When they arrived at the station, they waited to see the Divisional Police Officer. As they stood there, a man drove into the station, and someone pointed at him, whispering that he was the one who shot the boy. His name was Mr. Godwin Elewana, a retired NNPC staff and landlord in Calabar. Since Maria and her husband had not seen the body of the victim, they couldn't jump to conclusions. Moments later, they were invited into the DPO's office. Surprisingly, Mr. Godwin also entered the office briefly and then left. Inside the DPO's office, Maria explained that her son had been missing for 2 days. She said she had heard that a young man had been killed and that they wanted to confirm if it was her son. The DPO told them that he received a distress call that an armed robber had been shot. He said he sent his men to go and recover the body, and that when they returned, he could tell that the young man was no longer alive. Since he had no way to preserve the corpse, he had to call the Calabar Urban Development Authority to come and evacuate it for burial. Maria told the DPO that she and her husband needed to see the body. The DPO then took them to Goldie Cemetery, where the body was exhumed. To their greatest disbelief, the exhumed body was none other than their son, Douglas. Something strange happened after the body was confirmed. The police quickly reburied Douglas without giving the family time to say goodbye or even understand what had happened. The next day, the news got to their village and people came in large numbers to the family's home. Maria and her husband returned to the station and requested the body again for a proper burial. This time, the DPO allowed them to take the corpse. They took Douglas's body to the University of Calabar Teaching Hospital for an autopsy. The family wanted to know how exactly their son died. As soon as the police found out about the autopsy, they became uncomfortable. Officers followed the family home, insisting that the DPO wanted to see them. but Maria's husband, who was a lawyer, refused to go with them. He told them that his lawyer would speak on their behalf. A formal petition was then written to the Assistant Inspector General of Police in charge of Zone 6, the Cross River State Governor, and the State House of Assembly, and that was when things began to change. The Zone 6 Police Command took over the investigation and then began to unravel all the cover-ups. During the investigation, Maria discovered something she hadn't known before. Douglas was said to be in a relationship with Mr. Godwin's daughter, identified as Mercy. The investigating police officer explained that neighbors had seen Douglas frequently at Mr. Godwin's house. Some said he had been seen with the girl many times. Later, Maria also discovered that Mercy and Douglas had been friends right from school. The two of them attended the same secondary school in Calabar. When Mercy was brought in for questioning, she came with her two brothers. It was during this session that the full story began to unfold. One of Mr. Godwin's tenants told the Assistant Inspector General of Police that she was in her room when she heard Mr. Godwin shouting for someone to be caught. She said when she came out, she saw a tall boy running towards the Cross River Basin Authority. She also saw Mr. Godwin trying to climb the fence in pursuit. The neighbor said she begged Mr. Godwin to allow the boy to go, but he pushed her aside. Some moments later, she heard the two gunshots that ended Douglas's life. When the AIG questioned who gave Mr. Godwin the firearm, his two sons, one in the Immigration Service and the other in the Air Force, said they did. They claimed the gun was for hunting, but then there was a problem. The license for the said weapon had expired 5 years earlier. The AIG then asked the DPO why he buried the body so quickly without any investigation. It became clear that he was also involved in the cover-up. It turned out that 22-year-old Douglas Ojukbo had earlier sold his used laptop to Mercy, the daughter of Mr. Godwin Elewana. However, Mercy only paid part of the agreed sum of money, leaving a balance. In an attempt to recover the remaining money, Douglas began visiting Mr. Godwin's residence. On one of those visits, he met Mr. Godwin himself. Mr. Godwin was reportedly not happy to see him. He confronted Douglas and demanded an explanation. Douglas tried to explain the transaction he had with his daughter, but Mr. Godwin allegedly paid no attention to his explanations. He ordered Douglas to leave and warned him never to return. Douglas was about to leave when he was reportedly cornered by Mercy, who asked him to come back on the 10th of May to collect his balance. Trusting her word, Douglas went back to the house on the agreed date, but instead of meeting Mercy, he encountered Mr. Godwin again. Upon seeing Douglas, Mr. Godwin reportedly ran inside his house, returned with a firearm, and began chasing the young man. In a desperate attempt to escape, Douglas fled, but Mr. Godwin pursued him for almost a kilometer, up to the gate of the River Basin Authority, where he shot him twice. After committing the heinous act, Mr. Godwin carried Douglas into his car and drove to the Divisional Police Officer at the Federal Housing Police Station. Douglas's father alleged that Mr. Godwin conspired with the DPO to dispose of the body and cover up the murder. That same night, the two men reportedly buried Douglas in secret at the Goldie Cemetery in Calabar. After months of investigation, Mr. Godwin Elewana was charged with murder and his trial was held at the Cross River State High Court. On March 21, 2018, Godwin Elewana was sentenced to death by hanging for the murder of 22-year-old Douglas Ojukbo. However, he went to the Court of Appeal to appeal his death sentence, but justice was not to be denied as he lost the appeal. It is not known if any disciplinary action was taken against the DPO in the case. May Douglas's soul continue to rest in peace. Share your thoughts on this case in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more true crime stories. Thank you for watching and stay safe.